Also I heard the voice of the Lord saying,
Whom shall I send? And who will go for us?
Then said I, Here am I, send me. And he said,
Go! And you tell this people, hear ye indeed,
but understand not, and see ye indeed, but perceive not. Make the heart.
Hello, good morning, and welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. My name is Paul Strangini. We're in the middle of the parable of the sower. And we just finished the part where Jesus quoted from the book of Isaiah, chapter 6, a verse that was just starting to be quoted there in that song. And all the songs I use for my introductions are from my website, and you can find them on oraclesofgod.org. oraclesofgod.org. List in the description below. Listed in the description below, or as listed in the description below. Hearing without understanding, seeing without seeing, not really seeing what we're looking at. That's what that's about. Not really understanding. How is it that we can see and see not? Well, people do it all the time. Even literally, the human eye has these fovea inside. My wife's going to laugh at that word. But whatever, it's the little receptors for vision, and they're very highly specialized circuitry to deliver imagery to the brain, but they're in a very concentrated cluster. If our whole vision was to be that clear, we'd have to have gigantic brains. But there's a very narrow band on which we can focus. Like, it's really what's right in front of your eyes that you're really seeing, what you're paying attention to. And that's why Jesus said things like, take heed how you hear and with what measure you meet. Because these things have to do with perception. Because as I said of Jesus, he would do things and they were not seeing the miracles. They were seeing someone breaking their rules. They thought they knew what righteousness looked like. And miracles and healings were not on the table. It was, doing good was not really part of what it meant to be righteous. What it meant to be righteous was not doing the wrong things. But they couldn't see someone doing good, yet flaunting the rules which they had established as the, as sort of the extensions of the law. Like they had come to regard some of their traditions and rules as extensions of the law. And therefore, when Jesus would do things like as he said of them, he said, you do all the washing and the preening, and you wear the phylacteries, and you do all the outward things, and the phylacteries are right out of the Old Testament. But they had kind of these traditions they followed as far as ritualistic cleansings and stuff. Like when they would wash, they washed in a particular way. And when Jesus wouldn't follow it, it disturbed them as a sort of a repudiation of what they were doing. And that's what they looked at. He's not one of us, or he is openly trying to undermine us by doing miracles and then saying things that contradict what we say. Okay, so the card said we start in verse 16. But we can have our eyes shut, our ears closed. And that prevents us from entering into a place of understanding. And then he says to his disciples, "But blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. For verily I say unto you, that many prophets and righteous men have desired to see those things which ye see, and have not seen them, and to hear those things which ye hear, and have not heard them. Hear ye therefore the parable of the sower." You can spend a long time, trying to penetrate the idea of God and trying to understand who God is, what God wants from man, what we ought to do in any given situation. You can try to penetrate. You can try to look into the righteous thoughts, the righteous mind of God for your entire life, and not get in, to the depth that you could get in by the things that Jesus was showing. It does require a bit of a, like I said, when I wanted to look into these things. When I was 19, I began to desire earnestly to understand what was in the Bible. Since I claimed I believed in the Bible, I believed in the God of the Bible, I believed in Jesus. I had kind of read parts of it, but I had this impression that, that somehow knowing about it, there was something powerful about that. And not to take power over other people, but to take power to approach closer to God. And here am I, send me. Volunteering before, there was something about it, because I wanted to enter into service in one way or the other. I thought at the time I'm going to become a priest, a Catholic priest or something. But I hadn't really been a very good Catholic. I hadn't been confirmed in the church. We hadn't attended church regularly since I was very young. So I desired to look into the Bible, but I couldn't without someone to show me. And that's the role of the Holy Spirit in this time, that He can show us. But also through other people whom have been blessed with understanding, we can listen, be attentive, and learn. But so often, like you said about the unclean spirits, you can talk to people and all they're doing is looking for the errors in what you're saying. They're trying to find a way to pick you apart and tear you down. It's very normal. Like if someone wants to argue a position, you get two people, they're in opposition to each other, and they generally do not come to agreement. Like, that's not the purpose of the argument. Like, to find out the truth. The purpose of the argument is to attempt to convince one side or the other on a question where both sides, at least presumably, have some sort of argument to make. And a lot of times debates can be very one-sided. And even in those times where the side that's clearly getting handled doesn't just quit. Not usually. Certainly not often in public. No, yet in private. I've had many debates with people. I don't remember anyone ever, in the midst of the debate, other than myself, breaking down and saying, you know what, I think I'm wrong. That's not something that happens very often. I'm not trying to, I caved. I don't think it's a brag by any means. But it's rare to get people to cave on a hotly contested item. It's because they won't allow themselves to see. They won't allow themselves to hear. All they hear in your evidence is something they have to counter, something they have to deal with to deny the truth of what you may be saying. Many prophets and righteous men wanted to look into these things. They were trying to find out the truth. They were paying attention. They were listening to what they could hear of the Spirit of God. And look at Isaiah. And God, I heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Who will I send? Who will go for us?" And he volunteers and he says, "Okay, here's what I want you to tell everybody. You're hearing, but you're not listening. You're seeing, but you're not perceiving. You don't understand. And then he says, make their hearts fat, make their ears heavy, shut their eyes. That's what you're going to do, Isaiah. That's what the prophet does. He goes forth and shuts people's eyes, because he says, the way you've been doing it is wrong. The things that you believe are incorrect. The way you've been looking at this is twisted. And then for people's first reaction is, well, no, that can't be right. That can't be what's going on. What must be going on is you're bad. You're bad, I think. I think you might be a bad person because you're contradicting what I already believe. That's why the seeds get rejected. The truth is rejected. Like when he says when they hear the word of the kingdom and understand it not, I mean, it doesn't penetrate. They hear it, but they don't hear it. They see it, but they don't perceive what they're seeing. It's like casting your pearls before swine. They don't recognize what they're looking at. They just trample them underfoot. It's not what I'm looking for, which is usually a snack, a meal, something pleasurable. Not something hard and dense and tasteless. A pig might even eat them, but it won't wear them. So that word comes and it's hanging there. And the wicked one comes and snatches it away. And the wicked one is formed of all kinds of agency. Like of Judas, it says, Satan entered into him from that hour and he sought to betray the Lord. You know? It's like you preach the truth to someone, and that hour Satan enters into them and steals it away. Telling them that person doesn't know what they're talking about. That can't be right. I mean, and then whatever they might have heard just gets blown away. I mean, I've heard, how throughout the day, how much information do you get? Think about all the information you encounter every single day. All the things are said. I have conversations with my wife every single day about things. And, and there's tons of mundane stuff, that, I'm blown away. Sometime in the past week, I probably talked to my wife about the kids' chores, and I couldn't tell you what we said or when we said it, or, because I wasn't really paying attention. I wasn't focused on it. It wasn't that important. Important things get remembered. At least we try to remember them. I was just thinking, like, important things get remembered. Yeah, the way I always misplace things like my keys, but they're not that important. They're kind of mundane, And usually the problem is I'm not paying attention to them. I'm just carelessly putting them aside. You carelessly put things in places, and then it doesn't take hold. Like, I even know, like, I'm not good with names. There's a funny story I tell. When I first met my wife, she introduced herself to me at the Bible study. But I was so paying attention to my Bible study that I didn't really pay any attention to her. She's like, I want to join your Bible study. She walked in, accidentally to where I was teaching, and she was sitting there, and she heard me talking. And I wasn't paying attention to her. I was paying attention to what I was working on, what I was teaching. So I was like, yeah, you can join. And then at the end, she introduced herself, and at the end, she said, oh, will you be here next week? Yes, I'll be here next week. And so she comes back, starts coming back, and then, she kept coming back, and eventually I started falling in love with her not because of romance. We had no romance. It's teacher-student, though we're the same age, It was just, this is an extracurricular thing. I wasn't her actual teacher. Well, I was, I suppose, but not like in a formal sense. I'm falling in love with this girl, and I realize I don't know what her name is. And we're talking months have gone by. At least, well, maybe 2 months. Okay, 2 months, like maybe 11 weeks or something like that. So I have no idea what her name is. I haven't been paying attention. She probably only said it the first time. She seems to know my name. You know, oh, Paul. She was paying attention to me. I was not paying attention to her. I started paying attention to her, but by then no one was offering me names. There was no person. The person I was studying with left, and so pretty soon I'm just studying with her, and there's no one else to go, oh, hey, Katie, etc., to clue me in. So I gave her a Bible. The way I found out her name is I gave her a Bible, and she was because she had like an NIV or a NASB or something, and I was teaching out of the King James, so I gave her a King James Bible, and she was very thankful as usual. The first person ever thanked me for a study. And then she said, oh, I can write my name in it? I'm like, yeah, sure. And she says, oh, it's mine? Oh, I can write my name in it? You know, Katie Anderson? Shouldn't have said her whole name. Whatever. Not that that matters. Yeah. How many billions of those are there? Or millions? So anyways... And then that's how I found out her name. And you can believe I was paying attention that time. I never forgot. That was indelibly... I remember the conversation. I remember her face. Yeah, I remember looking at her as she said that. I could see her face. And that's the difference, is when you're paying attention, you see. It's not just a question of paying attention, though. Well, it is in a sense of this, that instead of attentively listening to the argument that someone else might be making, often people are not listening to that, but rather formulating their response because they don't agree. And that's a necessary thing to some degree, because if someone gives you an argument, you shouldn't just accept it. But we shouldn't just respond. We should weigh it, consider it. You know, someone asked a question about, being fertile ground ourselves. And that's so very important. It's something, on some level, we can't exactly control. But, because, like I said, I was focused on my Bible study. I didn't know that this girl's name was going to be significant to me. I had no idea this was something I was going to wish I had paid attention to. So we don't always know what we should be hearkening to. We don't always know what detail. Like I said, when I have taught previously the part about the unclean spirit roving about and coming back with 7 spirits more wicked, I didn't know what exactly I was supposed to be paying attention to there. So it had a negative impact on how I understood that passage, because I was looking at it wrong. We say we got to look at things in different ways. And I think that trying to see something, when something is important, if you want to understand it, if you're looking at some object of interest, you put it right. I'll like, if I want to see something, I take off these glasses because I'm nearsighted, and I always pick some odd thing off my desk, like a little pocket knife, and I'll get it up close and I'll examine it very closely. I look at it, and I'll turn it around at all sides to understand exactly what it is. Yeah, I do that with ideas and the scriptures. And the scriptures are a big thing. It's 66 books composed over legitimately, thousands of years. Multiple. I mean, you go back to the time of David was 1,000 years before Christ. So there's 1,000 years right there. And that was just part way through the book. Based on traditions that go doubtless much further back. Because where would they get the idea of the names of their ancestors going back quite far? Is it all just arbitrarily? They didn't just make it up. It was something handed down. So, if you want to understand that, it requires quite a lot of attention. Understanding the truth about the nature of reality and salvation and God and the Christian faith is a task that you don't necessarily, you don't necessarily have to become a teacher, but you got to pay attention to what you're hearing. You got to pay attention to the way you're hearing it. It's very critical, because we can miss out on very important things. We can focus on the wrong things. Like someone who, as far as I know, used to study with me, and I think they occasionally listen to things I do. They said to me at one time, that things I was saying caused them to take actions in the world, like to divide themselves from friends. And at the time I felt, I'm like, is that what I intended? Certainly there's times to divide yourself from friends or from people who you might fellowship with. Maybe they're not good people to fellowship with, bad influences. They're not going to help you in your walk, but they're going to drag you down and away from the truth and away from Christ. So certainly you should avoid those relationships. And even in the faith, someone can have doctrine so poisonous, so heretical, that fellowship is not possible. But we all have some degree of misunderstanding or misapprehension or misperception. We aren't looking at things the way we should. We're not seeing them from the right angle to understand that detail we need to know to be able to, to unify ourselves with the right course, with the true, with what we ought to truly be aligned, how we ought to be aligned. Like whether it be our thoughts, our actions, our character. We're trying to align ourselves with Christ to the greatest degree, and that's not an easy alignment. It's not easy to get yourself in the exact way. Easy in a sense of that, like I said, any given situation, do you know exactly what the righteous course is? It's not always obvious. And people always have questions like, what do I do about this? Here's a situation. What's the right thing to do? And it's not always obvious. And to get the best, you have to look. And the kingdom is presented, when the seed goes into good soil, it becomes completely surrounded. It becomes enveloped, meaning every side is being touched by that. It's like it's entering into your mind and you're looking at it and internalizing it and allowing it to grow along its natural path. So we covered all this, of course, but the stony place is the same that they heareth the word, and with joy they receive it. Yet he hath not rooted in himself, but dureth for a while. For when tribulation or persecution ariseth because of the word, by and by he is offended. Again, we can sort of like perceive something maybe as a good thing, and receive it as a good thing, and rejoice over it as a good thing. Like I say, like a miracle is done, or a word is preached. We have some truth preached to us about Jesus. The Lord. If you confess with your heart, if you believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, if you confess with your lips the Lord Jesus and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. That's Romans chapter 10 verse 9, right? And it's a very popular verse people quote, but a lot of times it's taken in a very legalistic sense of that's it, right? And you accept that truth. Wow, great. But not allowing it to take root. That's a seed, not the whole plant. The seed is believe on the Lord. Take him into your heart. But from that point, you got to allow those beliefs to take root and to extend the roots deeper into your mind, deeper into your character and your behavior, deeper into who you are as a person. It can't just remain as a surface thing. I believe this, I confess that. if it's not a deeply rooted belief, I remember someone saying to me, the fact of something that is deeply rooted doesn't make it correct, and that's fine, but it makes it useful. It makes it effectual. That's a better term, I think. That if something becomes deeply rooted, it has a much greater effect, and it has a much stronger hold. And that's certainly the case here, where he says, it dureth for a while, but when tribulation or persecution arises because of the word, by and by, which for some reason, I don't know why to the modern era it sounds like, along the way, it means right away. By and by. Right now, right immediately he is offended. Remember, the idea of offense is the idea that someone, the word is, I'm not going to look it up, it's scandalizo. If I'm wrong, then that'll be one of the mistakes I make. But it means to, basically the thing that causes to someone to stumble or become entrapped. And it's the thing that causes him to go astray, the thing that causes him to, when you're trapped, you're on like a path and you're trying to go, and then there's something that absolutely derails you. I mean, the faith, the root that was taken, the plant that had begun to grow is completely derailed because of the sun, and in the analogy, it's completely withers away. The sun rises, in which Jesus likens to tribulation or persecution. Any kind of heat, any kind of, when you're suddenly like, it's easy to have faith in good times, or easier, and when no one is challenging you. But when people challenge you and people, are threatening you, it's not so easy. So, if it's for the sake of the word, that thing, they are willing to drop it. They're willing to abandon their faith. It's just not deeply rooted enough to endure that kind of trouble. And that's the danger of superficial faith, of legalistic faith, thinking that I just do this and then that's the end of my, that makes me a Christian, and it does, but it does not solidly root you in the faith. It does not solidly root you, or let's say rather, it does not guarantee will bring forth the fruit. I was trying to figure out a good verb. It doesn't guarantee you're going to bring forth the fruit. And bringing forth fruit is the purpose of the Word of God being put into you. It's supposed to do things. It's supposed to have outcomes. Christianity is not just something that you believe surface level. It's supposed to take root in your heart and manifest itself in every aspect of your life, to where the life you live becomes the Christian life, the life of Christ. That in the situations you find yourself, you're reacting with the correct actions, or you're acting preemptively in the right time, place, and doing everything that you should be doing as someone who professes Christ, and not just professing it for the sake of profession, which is a major problem. It tends to inflate the number of Christians. If we were all subject to persecution, we would be somewhat diminished. Again, this was explained, the cares of this world, the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and he becomes unfruitful. Both these cases, you get the idea that their plant begins to grow. There's some sort of reception. There's some sort of, the seed does not just immediately they're not totally resistant to the faith. It's just, like in this case, other things are more powerful. And the other one is a case of the faith not becoming powerful in them. And then persecution became a powerful force to destroy their faith. But here, it is actually, there are things already there, or to enter in thereafter. I mean, it doesn't say exactly. All the seed, I till my garden every spring and plant it. And, from early on, there's all kinds of things that start growing up. And those things grow faster than the vegetables. And so they've got to be constantly plucked up. You can't have fruitful plants growing among weeds, at least not until the plant is grown up enough. Towards the end of the season, if you go out there, there are weeds in the garden. Because, one, I get too busy, and but plus, it no longer has an effect because the plants are so big that the surrounding weeds are not able to overcome. Like directly under the plant, because of the shade it casts, no weeds grow except very, very small, maybe, because very little light gets through the leaves of the fruiting plant. And so, you pluck the weeds out, etc., blah, blah, blah. But early on, you can't have them growing together. At least not the plants I grow. Though in the parable, Jesus is going to say, he's going to let the wheat and the tares grow together, and maybe they grow together fine. I don't know. The deceitfulness of riches. Well, my point was that it's been my prayer, not so much, I don't seek riches, but I've lived a lot of my life dealing with the problem of not enough money. And I've prayed to the Lord. I'm like, Lord, I would like to see the other side of that problem, because I know there is another side of that problem. It's like too much money. That can be a problem too. I'm ready for the challenge. And that may sound funny to people, but it is a challenge, and I say it somewhat tongue in cheek, no doubt, but it is it just gets, I don't know. I'm thankful that I am so busy in work and stuff, because it means I'm prospering, and that's good, and a good thing. When the fruit of your labor is fruitful, it is a good thing. It's so hard sometimes when you work and you don't seem to get anywhere. And that is very discouraging. So, I think the Lord is an encourager, and when we work diligently and hard, He is diligent to reward us and to reward our labors. And so we can be prosperous. But sometimes people, they can be deceived into thinking riches aren't a problem, they're a solution. Riches aren't something that can derail our lives. There's something that's going to, without fail, enhance our lives. If we were just rich, we would solve all our problems. Many problems can be solved with money, right? Like if you've got a car that's not working, you can solve that problem with money. If you've got a house that's broken, you can solve that problem with money. If you've got debts, those can be solved with money. But money can't make your life meaningful. It cannot make your life meaningful. It's certainly not in and of itself. For some people, like the pursuit and putting away of money is sort of the way they seek meaning in just squirreling it away, or at least that seems to be what they're doing, because it is so and they pile it up and then they die. Having most of the pile still left is a fascinating thing. Not unwise, and it's good to leave something behind for your children. But sometimes we can become, I guess, deceived. I guess, of course, people get. I'm not a big riches person. I haven't spent my life, raising my children and taking care of my wife because I wanted to be rich. You know what I mean? I haven't spent all my days, thinking about the Lord and meditating on the scriptures because I was more cared about what goes on in the world. the care of this world or the care of this life. That is, I believe, I mean, the way I'm taking that right now is we got to take care of ourselves in the world. And sometimes just taking care of ourselves, like caring for the things in the world, meaning my car, my house, my clothes, the things Jesus talked about in the Sermon on the Mount, take no thought for your life, what you will eat and what you will drink. And these are not the most important things. Take heed to the most important things. Pay attention to the most important things. Be focused on the most important things. When the most important things come in front of you, pay close attention to them. When the Lord Jesus comes and speaks, many righteous men had sought to hear the things he had to say, and they couldn't find it. He says, but you're blessed. Look at you. You can hear. You can see. You're paying attention to me. You're listening. Because he chose people who otherwise had nothing meaningful to pay attention to. Publicans. A lot of times the deceitfulness of riches is what they're following after in their life. And carrying after the thing, I gotta have money to do this, and and how I get it is just irrelevant. And sometimes, if they see the futility of that existence, they can be more ready to see, ready to open their eyes. The Apostle Paul is an interesting case because he was paying such close attention in opposition that he had to be struck blind before he could see, which is you think about it, the idea of like opening someone's eyes by blinding them. That means everything you are looking at, the way you're seeing the entire world, is wrong. You see nothing. You're not seeing anything as it truly is. You're not seeing things as they should be seen. And that was a demonstration to him. He became blind because he was blind, but he didn't see it. We ought to know how dangerous riches are. Like I said, I would rather have the problem right now of just dealing with riches. I don't think I'm deceived by them. But they can be deceptive. And they can get in the way of the word. Get in the way of our, because a lot of times there was a young man who wanted to follow Jesus. And then he said, what must I do? And Jesus told him the commandments. And they said, I've done all these from my youth up. He says, okay, one more thing. You lack one thing. Sell everything you have. Give it to the poor. You'll have treasure in heaven. And come on, follow me. Come with me. And it was he just asked him something that was too much. He went away very sad because he had great riches. And he couldn't see his way clearing, to giving up those riches to join the Lord Jesus. It was just a step too far. And that's the problem, is like when you have great riches, and I have my own riches. I'm rich in, like I said, in wife and children. I'm very richly blessed, and you can get very caught up with that family life and the care of the world and caring after them, and forget about the things of the Lord. But in so doing, you're not doing them a favor. Because we have to pay attention to the most important things first. And then if we do that, everything else will fall into line. Everything else will be as it ought to be. For catching the most important thing and dealing with it properly. But he that receiveth seed into good ground is he that heareth the word and understandeth it, which also beareth fruit, and bringeth forth some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. Subscribe to Line by Line Bible Studies, and for studies, songs, and more, visit oraclesofgod.org. All this is linked in the description below. So what more can we say of this, be good ground. We want to... What's the next parable? We got 20 minutes. Ugh. All right. Well, I guess we go right into it. There's no... I almost feel like I should get started. We've covered this enough. I don't think I need to say any more. Yes. Hear the word and understand it. Verse 24. We'll probably read the whole parable and the explanation. Another parable put he forth unto them, saying, The kingdom of heaven is likened unto a man which sowed good seed in his field. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. But when the blade was sprung up and brought forth fruit, then appeared the tares also. So the servants of the householder came and said unto him, Sir, didst thou not sow good seed in thy field? From whence then hath it tares? There's a rogue fly in here. Go away. And he said unto them, An enemy hath done this. The servants said unto him, Wilt thou then that we go and gather them up? But he said, Nay, lest while you gather up the tares, ye root up also the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. And in the time of harvest I will say unto the reapers, Gather ye together first the tares, and bind them in bundles to burn them. But gather the wheat into my barn. And then he says another parable. Parable of the mustard seed. And then a parable of the kingdom of heaven is like unto leaven. And then 34 it says, All these things spake Jesus unto the multitude in parables, and without a parable spake he not unto them, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophet, saying, I will open my mouth in parables, I will utter things which have been kept secret from the foundation of the world. Which script? Where's that quoted from? Well, open. It sounds to me like a. I'm not gonna guess. I'll open my mouth in parables. Can't see with those. Okay. Psalm 78. It's all right. The secrets can be hidden in these stories. You know, parables can hide things that have been kept secret. Then Jesus sent the multitude away and went into the house, and his disciples came unto him, saying, Declare unto us the parable of the tares of the field. They didn't understand the parable. He said, Tell us what that meant. He answered and said unto them, He that soweth the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world. The good seed are the children of the kingdom, but the tares are the children of the wicked one. The enemy that sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the world, and the reapers are the angels. As therefore the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, so shall it be in the end of this world. The Son of Man shall send forth his angels, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all things that offend, and them which do iniquity, and shall cast them into a furnace of fire. There shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Then shall the righteous shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Who hath ears to hear, let him hear. And then he goes to another parable. I skipped those two in the middle because I just want to deal with one parable at a time. I mean, I could have read the parable of the mustard seed and the, the leaven? But those deserve their own examination. We'll definitely talk about mustard seed faith. But I I gotta do something. I almost want to like reorder my verses in this document. So, anyways, we heard the parable of the tares, and a lot of people take this literally. Like these are when he talks about the explanation that they are the children of the wicked one. They think that means literally flesh and blood children. Well, like I said, if you go to 1 John chapter 3, and this are the children of God manifest and the children of the devil. As Jesus says, he would gather out of his kingdom all things which give offense and do iniquity. The seed of the serpent, the seed of the devil, is sin. And it's clear in this passage because that's what he said. He says that. It's basically, he says, them which give offense and do iniquity. That's what marks them off. And I've often said this, and I'm not taking this down quite as methodically as I do in the study on oraclesofgod.org. I believe it's number 4, the seed of the serpent. And if you disagree with me, I challenge you to listen to that. Because I believe there is a seed of the serpent, but it is not a carnal seed, it is a spiritual seed. Meaning he sows the spiritual thing. The Son of Man sows the word of the kingdom, right? The sower is the Son of Man. He that sows the seed. He goes forth and he sows, because because the thing is, you can't have a half literal interpretation. You have to interpret the whole thing literally. If the devil is carnally fathering people by dint of this parable, then so is the Lord Jesus. He is the physical father of everyone else. The one sowing of seed versus the other. Also, the problem is that it would make it sort of turns, it makes a mockery of the idea of judgment, because judgment is entirely, if that was the way you interpret this, then judgment is just entirely based on what your race is. If you are one of those descended from the devil, and I guess I'm not making a very good, I'm not breaking it down, I guess I don't take it that seriously. It just seems like a wacky, far-out interpretation to me now these days, even though one time I believed it. If you have, it comes down to then like everyone who is planted of the devil, a terror. If it comes down to planting, see the seeds determine the outcome. That means there's really no this whole world, there is no I don't want, I'm hesitating to say purpose, because it's like I don't want to mischaracterize and say it renders everything purposeless, but it sort of removes any sense of like it's just a question of just weeding out the children of the devil, like and it's literal. And the thing is that if they sin because, and I've used this argument many times, if they sin because they are the children of the devil, then what's your excuse? I've said this, if being a child of the devil was Cain's excuse for being a murderer, meaning it wasn't anything like there wasn't anything about him in the way he was acting out his life in the world that made him evil. It was rather he was innately more wicked than other men because of who his father was. And that would mean that every truly wicked person was a child of the devil, like literally. And it gets complicated because in a sense it's like, well, they spiritually are the children of the devil. That's the whole point of the parable. We're saying he goes forth and sows the truth. And this is what it really means. The Son of Man sows the truth, sows the word of the kingdom. And the enemy sows word that is in opposition. An enemy comes along and he spreads lies, other things, so that the field that was sown with truth also brings forth tares. And that's symbolic of people who receive the kingdom and people who receive it not. And then he says this part. An enemy has done this. And they said, well, do you want us to go separate them, to go gather up the tares? And he says, no, lest you root up the wheat with them. It is best to wait till they're finished. And I think the suggestion is, as I have always believed, that it is being suggested that at the early phases of things, and from what I understand, these things are supposed to be difficult to distinguish from each other, but they are able to distinguish them immediately. There are tares here. Some sort of agricultural expert knows the difference between plants even in the seedling phase. And they say, should we root them up? And he says, no, let them grow together till harvest, and then we'll separate them. Because we do not want to accidentally root up the wheat also. I've often said that, someone who is, like, look at the Apostle Paul. He's an easy example. I use him all the time. You could look at him in a certain phase of his life and say, well, there's a tare. And you could go in and root him up, in the midst of his breathing, threatening and slaughter after the believers, the Christians, as he's threatening to persecute them, you could, well, let's rip him up. Let's destroy him. But we would unwittingly be rooting up the wheat and not the tare. That's why we go to harvest. That's why the necessity of going to harvest is that the wheat not get plucked up with the tare, because there's in some way the possibility of confusing the two, or while you do one, doing the other. That both have to grow up together and bring forth fruit. They're and I guess also implied in this is they're just too closely intertwined. That we should just, instead of trying to stop them from growing together, let them grow together. Let the wicked and the righteous grow together. And then we'll separate them at the end. Gather first the tares and bind them in bundles to burn them. But gather the wheat into my barn. And that's what he said before, that, or when I read from the explanation, the reapers are the angels. But there's a separation. He will sever the wicked from the just. And he casts them into a furnace of fire. I mean, and there's so many times in the New Testament where it's like, there's severe references to the punishment that God metes out made. And let me just quickly check the chat because we're close to the end. If there's a question, no chat, no question. There are many harsh descriptions. There should be wailing and gnashing of teeth. He would cast them into a furnace of fire. But so often, like, what it's just said like that, and people extrapolate tradition to that. They extrapolate what they already believe about the nature of God's punishment. And I think that's unfortunate because it's like there's you have to take everything into account. that the idea of a furnace of fire is a place of absolute destruction. What happens to dried grass in bundles thrown into a furnace? And it says, well, there's going to be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Well, yeah, you bet. But does that, this doesn't imply eternal torment is all I'm saying, really. It doesn't imply eternal torment, and you can try to throw that in based on other passages, but that is not, this symbology, this idea, at least in this passage, certainly later on, it doesn't imply eternal torture. It only can be done, it only can be sort of, you can think of that and import the idea over, but this passage itself does nothing to support that position. And then we're at the parable. So we got up to what, 30? I'm gonna just stop there. Because we're at the end and I actually have to run right now. So I'm just gonna close with that and just say, well, I'll take a minute here. We've still got 3 minutes. We're not going to proceed any further. The severing of the wicked from the just is an act of destruction on God's part. He destroys them. And I'll do a better job. I'm sorry, last night I did not get the sleep I had wanted to. I'm tired of talking about that. I really wish I didn't even just say it then. Oh well, these are unedited. That's why. That's why. So we're gonna continue. We're gonna do the parable of the leaven and of the mustard seed, and then we'll get back around to the tares again. And the second time through, I'm gonna take another shot at it and see if I can't nail it a little better for you. I guess sometimes I get so caught up on saying how things are not, as opposed to firmly fixing in our mind how they are. And next time we'll do a little better job at that. Subscribe to Line by Line Bible Studies, and for more study songs and such things, go to oraclesofgod.org. And I have all kinds of free studies. It's all free. I don't want to list everything. If you have a question, you can send it to questions@oraclesofgod.org. And I will attempt to answer it if appropriate here. I don't reveal personal information. On my website for years, I've been talking back and forth with people. I don't, I wouldn't actually put your full message on the screen, or I might put part of it, the pertinent part, or I might put none of it at all. It just depends on how easily it translates into a if I can paraphrase your question, generally we'll do that. So, anyways, thanks for joining me today in this study. I look forward to studying with you again tomorrow. Let's just get up. Here we go.
Make the hardest people fight, make